Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of Adventures University. Now, this week I figured we'd keep things a little simple. I'm just do a quick Q&A on things that people have asked me about my world building. I've selected 4 questions that are related to culture. So this is going to be a culture-focused FAQ. How do you make cultures unique? When I'm making a culture in a story or an RPG or whatever the case is, I will first get a general idea of what I'm looking for. I'll have a blueprint of another culture that exists in real life. For example, in the current world that I'm running games in, I have a couple places like there is a communist Egypt. There is a militaristic Wild West Chinese country. There is a Nazi Spain. I just took a couple of different cultural ideas, mashed them together, and then started making tweaks. Over time, they evolved to something more than that initial blueprint. The initial thing is just for a foundation to start with, and then as you come up with more ideas, build a history into it, it tends to evolve and become something new and great, usually. How do you do names in different places? For names, I first base them off of the culture that the area is based off of, such as Spanish or French, etc. Then I'll look at any fantasy elements. For example, in my world, I like having my elves be either French or Italian. I kind of had a blend of that for the elves. So I'll first pick a French or Italian name based on where they're from specifically, and then I'll give a more stereotypical elven twist to it to make it sound more what people expect to be elvish, but still maintaining that French and Italian theming to their locations. Now, you could always go with a standard dwarves or Scottish type thing, but if you want to break the mold, I, for example, decided to make them more Roman. It made sense. I gave them the big columns and towers, so it still had the dwarvish feel to it of the marble statues and things, grandiose halls and villas and stuff. And I also made a lot of it underground. But but I wanted to steer clear of the just Scottish dwarf, so I went with Roman. Now, a lot of the time, I'll just stop right there, and it's good. But sometimes, if I see something, like, for example, there's a special value system in a specific region, I'll implement that into the naming system as well. For example, there's one nation that wants to have a close tie to their ancestors, but they also want to keep a level of individuality. So what they do is they take ancestral names, and they'll modernize them by combining them. And again, you don't need to do anything extra like that. But if you see something and it makes sense for that region, like naming people after flowers or after ancestors or things like that, then go for it. It can add extra richness and, again, a lived-in world. How do you set up economies? I actually tend to work backwards in making economies, making first a world economy, seeing what regions would have what resources, generally speaking, that would be traded globally, or to their neighbors at least, and then deciding how to make those make sense on a more specific regional location, small scale. For example, if there is a nation that has a focus on trees and lumber, what do they need? Because they're exporting all the wood, what would they want in exchange for that? Would they just be super wealthy? Or would they specifically need animals because they don't have enough space for the grazing? So they would need, one of their neighbors may be shepherds or pig farmers or whatever the case may be needed for that. Geography plays a big role in this as well, but that is going to be an entire video on itself, probably several videos. So we're not going to go too far into that. Just know that geography can play a very big role in economies. How do you decide on the politics? I do politics pretty much exactly the same as I do my economy. In fact, I'll often do them at the same time because I look at the geography and trade relations and I figure out logically who would be friends with whom. Then after that, I'll factor in the greed and corruption that would naturally take place whenever you have large bodies of people. And then I'll also decide on what sounds interesting that people would want to experience or read about and things like that. And it'll just make good stories that people want to engage with. One thing to remember about cultures is that they're constantly evolving. And don't be afraid to let your cultures that you're creating evolve too. As you start, don't worry that it doesn't seem completely unique or very fleshed out, because that comes with time. Just start with something and then build from there, and eventually it will become more interesting and individualized as you go. Remember, Journey of 1,000 Miles starts with the first step. And that's all for today. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and if you want to hear more of these, hit that bell button so you can be able to get the notifications when more show up, which should be every Wednesday moving forward, just like I said last week. Also, if you want to support my work so I can make more and better videos for all of you, head over to Patreon/Adventures University and subscribe to one of my memberships there. And I do want to thank all of my YouTube and Patreon subscribers so far, because it is amazing that I can do this and both help you, because that's what I enjoy doing, and be able to support a family with it as well. So thank you ever so much. So until next time, have fun.